Welcome back to Your Calvinist Podcast. My name is Keith Foskey, and as always, I'm your Calvinist. And I'm joined today with one of the speakers from the pre-conference here at the Calvinism Conference in Tullahoma. And the pre-conference wasn't about Calvinism, though. It was about the subject of full preterism. In fact, it was about the dangers of full preterism. And I'm joined by Dr. Sam Frost, and he is a pastor, teacher, not prophet, but professor. And
I'm one of the two witnesses.
Yeah, okay.
It's in Revelation 11.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, Dr. Frost, I appreciate you being on the show today, and just want to ask you a few questions, because when you talk about full preterism, you're talking about people who believe the entire Bible has been fulfilled, right, as far as prophecy goes, and I know very few people that are like that, but you said there's an entire subculture of people who are...
I'd call it a subculture. It sounds larger than it actually is.
Okay.
But the internet is its best friend.
Really?
And social media is its best friend. Short of having social media, I don't know how far it would actually spread. But it's alarming enough to where I get enough emails from churches and pastors that are know my testimony of leaving it in 2011, and having been in it as one of the top tier teachers with it, with Don Preston, Mike Sullivan, and several others, Dave Curtis, Ed Stevens, Jack Scott, Larry Siegel.
Yeah, when you
Max
mentioned
King, Tim King, I could go down the list of the top guys.
Yeah, when you were teaching the other night, and I do want to recommend to the audience that they, if the recording is made available, definitely listen to that recording.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you were sharing a lot, and you were saying that these guys, you get together and have conferences and all
sure.
of these
just
things.
like this one.
Yeah. But it was to promote the idea of full preterism.
100% all prophecy is fulfilled by the time of 70 A.D.
Including the resurrection.
Everything. The whole
so how do they understand what the resurrection is, though? So for them, it's not a bodily resurrection,
right,
would it be? How do they understand the resurrection?
It's spiritual lines. So what we would call regeneration. Prior to Christ, regeneration is not happening.
Okay.
Because of what Christ did, regeneration through the Holy Spirit is now happening. So that's the differences between salvation, or what was going on in the Old Testament days, or what was not going on in the Old Testament days, and now what's going on in New Testament days through the resurrection of Jesus, and now we have the Spirit and regeneration. And the great benefit is when we die, we go to heaven, whereas before, the saints, before Christ, did not have that. They went to a Hadean realm or a Sheol or something like that. So they were separated, even at death, because of sin. They were separated from God, even at death.
Wow.
Christ got rid of all that, and so now we get to go to heaven.
So as a person who held this, I feel like I can ask you questions. Okay, what do they believe about this? What do they believe about that? And get a good answer. So these are legit questions that I've had, and I will submit to you that I do have sympathy for a partial preteristic view, as far as in view of things like the Olivet Discourse, certain things that Jesus said, referring to being within the time of the lifetime of the apostles. But I certainly hold to a future. I would even say future Antichrist, future things that are still future. For me, I hold to, like I said, I'm sort of eclectic. There's a term.
That's fine.
A term I heard recently was redemptive historical eclecticism, and I kind of liked it.
That's good, actually. That's where most people are at, and certainly most biblical scholars, conservative and liberal, are in and around that.
Yeah.
That kind of area. Because I always liken it to an alphabet, and you've got A, G, L, Y. Okay, you fill in the...
Yeah.
I know A and I know L, but what goes in, so we don't have it all down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that eclectic, we're drawing from a lot of sources, and I think that keeps you safe. But when you narrow it down, this view only, you're, I think, cutting yourself short a little bit. So full preterist does that with a vengeance.
So within full preterism, in the time we are now in history, what do they look forward to? Do they look forward to human history perpetually going into the future? For infinity. So there will always
be... This never ends.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I thought I heard you say literal. That the other night. I wanted to clarify. So
Don Preston's he's literal on that, because if this is the Christian age that Jesus inaugurated,
Yeah.
and it never ends, then you cannot have an end.
Oh, okay.
Because that would be the end of his reign over which age he's ruling over.
Wow, that makes sense.
There's not even, so if you even said, well, okay, let's go the empirical route. The sun eventually is going to burn out through entropy and the second law of thermodynamics and all, it's 5 billion years from now the sun will.
Yeah.
Nope, that can't happen.
Oh, wow.
So nothing like that at all.
Okay, so good leads to the next question. What is the millennium in partial preterism then?
It's the ascension of Christ to 70 AD. It's that generation.
I heard someone say that, and I said I'd never heard that before, but I'm glad you said that because I was recently interviewed on a podcast. I have this little stick where I talk about being the king of the amillennialists. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I've heard that.
It's a joke. It all started because I was put on a podcast poll about who's your favorite amillennialist. It was Kim Riddlebarger, Sam Storms, and me. And I was like, I shouldn't be on this list. I'm not published. I'm just a internet comedian, right? I shouldn't be on this list.
How did I get here?
Yeah,
right.
But I won because of the internet, and it's ridiculous, right? And so I wear a crown, and I do this whole joke about being the king of the amillennialists because of that. So that's where
I've seen that.
Yeah, that's where the joke.
Yes.
So with that, I have a view of amillennialism.
And I appreciate your work, by the way.
Well,
I've seen this.
I appreciate you and getting to know you. I've really enjoyed that. So that the millennium. Obviously, I'm an amillennialist, and I don't know where you stand. I was going to ask you that.
Amillennial.
You're amillennial. Okay.
Is there any other?
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly within this conference there would be some disagreements.
Yeah.
So, from the amillennial perspective, I had never heard someone say that the millennium was only the 40 years between Christ and AD 70.
Yeah.
But that's their view. That's their view.
And you can see where you're constrained because of 70 AD is your endpoint. Then you can't go outside of that endpoint. So
wow.
you have to, and 100% prophecy is fulfilled.
And I guess they see the release of Satan as like the Titus and those things going into.
Yeah.
Wow.
Everything. So allegory becomes your best friend.
Would have to.
Everything's allegorized between whatever Josephus says. So Josephus. So there's 67 books in the Bible.
Because Josephus becomes the 67th. Yeah.
The book of Josephus, chapter 3. So that, you read the Bible with Josephus in both hands, and that's whatever you can allegorize, locus, whatever you can do in Revelation becomes the Roman onslaught. So just all of that.
Well, that leads to another question, and that's the question of your view of Revelation. Do you see Revelation? First of all, where's your dating on Revelation? Because a partial preterist or even a preterist would have to date Revelation prior to 70.
They demand it.
Yeah. And do you have a strong position on that, or
as a biblical scholar, I lean towards the late date. I think the better arguments are there.
Okay.
However, it's a legitimate argument for early date, and there certainly is a large group, I wouldn't say the majority, but there's enough.
Yeah. And by the way,
but my view doesn't depend on the date.
Yeah. Just so you know, these microphones are really good at picking up your voice, so even though people are walking in, it's not going to bother the recording. I didn't want you to think that we had to stop. No, we didn't have to stop. Last year, I was able to get some really good recordings with people talking less than 3 feet away, so it's all good. It's all good.
So my view doesn't. If your view actually depends on the date, there might be trouble with the way you interpret Revelation. But my view doesn't. I think Revelation is speaking of events, and in a mysterious way, from Ascension, Revelation 6, to New Heavens and New Earth.
Okay.
And in between that is. You will have tribulation in this world, but take care, I've overcome the world. But the end is not yet. I think that's what John is doing there through a series of events that's going to take place.
Yeah.
But so some have called that idealistic.
I was going to say, sort of sounds like maybe idealism. I think isn't it Beale who has
Great Beale, I love.
I heard you mention him. I think recapitulation is the term some people use. Okay, all right with that.
So
very similar to probably where I would end up.
And if you've got the entire book of Revelation figured out, I would love to
not
talk
at all.
more with you. Or if you know anyone that does.
I was interviewed
would
the
be
other day,
great.
and somebody says, "Who do you think the 144,000 is?" I said, "I don't know." I was like, I got a few ideas, but
My
I can't.
opinion, yeah.
I can't tell you for sure. And like I said, you're just as likely to be one of the two prophets. I don't,
Wouldn't that be cool if you were with
well,
one
if this,
of the
yeah,
you were acting?
yeah, it's
Or
you
the
and
two
me.
witnesses
It's us,
here.
or the two witnesses.
This is-
This is it. It's on this podcast. Yeah,
That's the name of your new. You could.
yeah. The two witnesses.
two
Yes,
witnesses
me and Dr.
podcast.
Frost are going on the road. We're gonna
.com.
twowitnesses.com.
That's what John was seeing.
Yeah.
Was
That's us. That's us. Well, brother, I have just a ton of questions that come to mind because even more recently with this whole thing that I've been dealing with, eschatology matters and different stuff, it's caused me to have to re-examine things. So I'm getting more questions than I've ever had.
Yep.
And there was a time when I was what some might call a pan-millennialist or an aha millennialist. I did. It wasn't that I didn't
It's
care,
understandable.
but I was focused on the systematic theology that I was teaching, and I was focused much more on soteriology and those areas.
Right.
And I've been in the same church for 18 years, so I knew I was going to get around to eventually preaching on eschatology, but I've sort of tried to avoid it because I knew it was.
Calvin didn't write a commentary on it. Luther avoided it completely.
I made that point exactly.
He didn't.
I said, somebody asked, when are you going to preach Revelation? I said, when I get 60. I think I feel good. I'm 43, so I got 17 more years before I do.
Good advice.
But in your perspective, you said the other night you think there's a real danger in this. And I want you to speak to, as we draw to a close, like I said, I wanted to make this sort of short, but as we draw to a close, I want you to tell our audience what is the real danger of a full preterist view and what can it bring into a church and what can it cause. Like I said, you have as much time as you want, but just tell us what it is that we should be on the lookout for and why it's dangerous.
First off, it's a rejection of the community of the saints, past and present. So confessional-wise, it throws all of that off as just merely man-made. They're confessions that have moved whole segments of Christian populations are not really that important, if important at all. And so it really endorses kind of a Lone Ranger Christianity. Me and God and the Bible, we've got it all figured out, and I don't really need you or anyone else to tell me how I'm going to believe.
That is a very popular sentiment right now.
Welcome to America.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that rugged individualism. It's pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, free will. You get into that whole mentality of it. I certainly understand that's culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it really brings that in, whereas you get into church and communion of the saints and community and the whole corporate body and all of that that would lead to a rejection of going to church.
Yeah.
That kind of fellowship no longer becomes really necessary.
Yeah.
It's not seen as any vehicle of sanctification because you're already sanctified. It's fulfilled. So there's
no progressive sanctification. You mentioned that the other night.
Yeah.
It robs. I loved how you, and again, people should listen to the thing. I don't mean to cut you off, but you said it messes with your Christology. It messes with your doctrine of sanctification. Messes with all of these things. It messes with your doctrine of ecclesiology, the church. I was like, that's so true. Everything gets whittled away.
And so, of the hundreds that are friends of mine that are still full preterists, some have become atheists. Some very close to me have become atheistic.
Yeah.
Most don't go to church at all. And then if you ask them about any ethics or morals, it's just really situational ethics or just consequences. So don't drink. I don't recommend drinking heavily if it's creating problems.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it a sin. Sin's been done away with. The law's been fulfilled.
See, that's an entirely different idea.
Creating some problems. You need to deal with that, but you're not condemned or anything. Don't. Like you get, if you're a pastor and you're an alcoholic, you're going to get excommunicated and dealt with, right? But in their world, that's all That's all pointless. And even the Lord's table, there's no point in it anymore. Baptism, there's no point in it anymore. Why would you do that?
Wow.
So that's the dangers.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And it's that it's consistent.
Yeah.
If everything is fulfilled, so are we going to have these things in the new heavens and the new earth, denominations and arguing about Bible translation? No.
And because they believe this is that.
It's perfected. So if you just move that over to where we're at now, then why are we arguing about this stuff now? It doesn't matter what you believe about God. You die, you go to heaven. It's that kind of stuff.
Wow.
Now, some are universalists, so that's another broadening or blossoming thing that's happening within the movement too.
A universal full preterist.
Death has been done away with and swallowed up in victory. Spiritual death has been removed. So whether you know it or not, you're going to heaven.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, not all believe that.
No, I know, but this is some of the logical implications, right? Well, Dr. Frost, I want to ask you to tell our audience if people want to read your books, if people want to see what you've written, how can they get a hold of you and learn more about what you're doing?
So I write on a blog. It's about what I do, and then vigil.blog, vigil.blog, and that has all the information.
Vigil.blog.
Yeah. Pretty much the books and everything else.
Yep.
And then I've been on Facebook about a year after it started. I'm one of these nerds that followed DOS and floppy disks, and we went to the little disks.
I used to work for America Online. If you can,
when America with the disc that came out, and you had to dial up and do the whole thing. So this was great. I was, oh man, this is everything. So Facebook started, and we were on Pal Talk before, and I gravitated to Facebook immediately. I thought, this one here, because MySpace just was not.
Yeah, it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same.
And I didn't like it, but Facebook I liked. So I don't put my personal information of bowel movements and stuff on there either. I keep it people put way too much personal stuff. So I've met a lot of scholars. I've met a lot of people, and I use it for that way that it should be used, and it's benefited me greatly. So I'm on Facebook.
I'll send you a friend request.
I'll do that. And I spend probably an hour and a half a day on Facebook. And I've been doing that for quite some time.
Cool.
Built an audience up, so you can reach me there.
Yeah.
I'm pretty approachable.
Well, you seem to be, and I appreciate it. Well, Dr. Frost, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. You really educated me a lot this weekend, and thank you so much.
This has been a great conference.
Absolutely has. Great. Absolutely. God bless you, sir. Thank you.